Welcome back to the channel, and today we're in the test zone because we're going to be doing some testing, in particular of the aiming servos. An issue I've been running into recently is the aiming servos tend to have a limited strength, even on max strength, to where they cause things to start wobbling if you build off of them too much. For example, that explains everything that I would get. That's the example. So this is supposed to be a mouse controlled arm, and I tried to dial it in as best as I could. And as you can see, in certain situations, it just freaks out completely. Also, it's at a way slower setting to try to accommodate that. Ideally, I wanted it at speed 1, but now watch what happens. It just gets completely out of control. So because the servos have this limitation, I think it's worth trying to figure out what actually are some of the objective measurements of these limitations. And this idea was brought to me by WOF's 117, weight testing the new servos. All right, so let's get right into it. There's probably a handful of tests I could do. One that I'm going to try initially is let's just attach things to this servo on a vertical plane and then see. There is a difference between a servo trying to move versus a servo being in the stationary locked position. But let's see when it's in its stationary position where it's not trying to do anything necessarily. In order to guarantee that, we're going to select off by default. Let's see how far does it take for me to build an arm here before it starts drooping. And in order to make sure that this actually stays upright, I should probably put an anchor block on this thing. All right, so this is fine right now. Let's speed this up and just make sure that this is a thing that will even become an issue by adding a whole bunch of weight right onto the end of it. Oh, and there you go. We've got the instability creeping in already. Let's just add a whole bunch. It looked like it was just an intentional hammer machine. All right, I think I need to elevate this up a little bit more so it doesn't just immediately hit the ground. We need some better context for how much of an effect this is realistically having. And this should not even be able to hit the ground. So let's see how this looks. So you can see it gives a feedback loop because the servo is trying to stabilize. It's trying to correct it, but then like all that weight gains momentum during the correction, so then it overcorrects, and then vice versa, the feedback loop happens. All right, so that was a lot of kilograms. Let's see if we have that amount of weight. Proximity to the servo should matter physically. Double the distance should have double the heaviness to the servo, essentially. But here you can see we're perfectly fine. Oh, let me actually give the servo a activation toggle because there might be a different... Wait, that shouldn't have changed anything. Okay, now we're fine. But what I was gonna say is there might be a difference between its locked state or its off state and its active state. So now if I go to active, now you can see it is responding to my camera input and it actually seems stable. So that's 50 kilograms, but close to the servo. There's actually another thing I want to test is, do counterweights counter instability? So let's add weight until it becomes unstable. All right, so now the servo is off and this is happening. If I turn the servo on, it doesn't seem to change how big the feedback loop is. All right, so now I'm gonna just duplicate this to the other side. So now it is equal weight on either side of the servo. My guess is that this balances it out. It doesn't. And it immediately makes sense when I'm watching it, because although it is counterweighted, it doesn't stop the fact that the movement of the servo imparts momentum onto the weights. And the problem is that it has to stop that movement at its 0 point, at its goal, its target destination. And it can't stop that momentum because they're too heavy. So counterweighting this is actually a learning experience. I assumed that counterweighting would have been a practical solution, but seeing how the servos are actually working and it's more counter momentum than counterweight, adding more weight does not give counter momentum. That's still a lot of weight to try to stop. So definitely learned something with how the servos are working here. Interesting. All right, but this is in the vertical axis. Let's swap this to a horizontal now. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, as soon as I activated it, it had that issue. When I spawn in... Oh, actually, this time, even spawning in, it was messed up. Okay, I got lucky on that first spawn in, apparent. Oh, no, there we go. All right, but it's fine now. And as soon as I press number 1, 3, 2, 1, it instantly becomes unstable. Oh, how did it... Oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Because this has a range limit, this is interesting. Right now, it has a range limit. When it reaches the edge of that limit, it actually becomes a rigid stopping point, which immediately dissipates the momentum. So it gets rid of that servo flick. So I bet if I actually change this to 1 and 1, this is going to dramatically reduce the effects here. So I'll turn it on right now. And you can see nothing has changed. So as I increase this angle now, let's go 5 and 5 degrees on either side. Yeah, now you can see when I'm looking directly straight, there we go. It has the effect, but as soon as I turn a little bit, it immediately reaches its endpoint and has a hard stop. So it's not that the servos themselves aren't strong enough, because like obviously when it has a stopping point where it can just stop the momentum, but when we're within the active range of the servo, it has a weakness within that probably is there intentionally. It probably creates some type of realism effect in more common use circumstances. But I wonder if is it worth it though, versus just having an absolutely rigid like stopping point. Like why can't whatever's causing it to stop here? Why can't that just be always happening in the direction of pointing? I don't know anything about game development, so I don't know what the challenges are to the physics of this type of thing, but that's just what my intuition is telling me. But let's try to figure out, now that we know that it is not necessarily a weight offset thing as much as it is a countering momentum thing, can we get this effect to happen with the weight centered on the servo? Initially, I would have thought that this would be obvious, like, no, this shouldn't be an issue, but now I feel like this is still gonna matter. What I'm gonna do is expand the range so that we have infinite range, so we're not gonna have that hard stopping point anywhere. And let's see what happens. I'm gonna turn it on, and actually, with this amount of weight at least, it is perfectly fine, perfectly capable of stopping the momentum. But I feel like there is less momentum to stop just because it's closer to the center of rotation. All right, let's turn this on. And actually, this is doing pretty well too. This might actually not be a problem if the weight is just centered. Yeah, it has no problem with this actually. I'm guessing though, as soon as we go even just a little bit outside of the center of rotation, let's actually do the minimumist. So now I'm just adding the 4 weights, 1 block from the center of rotation. Activate. Perfectly fine right now. All right, so I'm gonna stay within 1 block of the center of rotation. All right, now you can see tiny bit of shakiness, but it is way more stable. So it is a huge, it is, even with the weight, no matter how much weight it is, the bigger factor seems to be distance from the point of rotation. So if you want to have a more stable servo, you want to keep whatever weight there is closer to the center. And unfortunately, counterweighting it seems to not matter. Because yeah, now if I just add 3 weights to this side, 3 weights to this side, suddenly unstable. Counterweighting will not fix it. All right, so I'm trying to figure out how to get a measurement of like how much weight a servo can handle, because it's not necessarily a raw single number for weight, because it's the distance of what amount of weight. Like there's distance and weight are both factors. So like I couldn't tell you how much weight a servo can handle, or I don't know how to tell you how much weight a servo can handle. Because it depends on how far away from it you build. So the big thing with this is like tank turrets is what I'm imagining. I'm imagining a lot of people are gonna really want to use servos for tank turrets, and you're gonna want to have a cool tank turret design and then have a nice long barrel with your heavy cannon at the end of it. And I don't know if the servos are going to be able to handle that. Well, actually, I do know that for the most part, the servos aren't going to be able to handle that unless you somehow build a super lightweight design. But the more detailed you get, the more blocks you're going to end up adding. So I know it's going to be an issue. Let's just take this as our measurement for now. Let's use 50 kilograms. And I want to see how far can it handle 50 kilograms, a single 50 kilogram block. All right, this is perfectly fine. So this is 3 blocks away. I'll double it, see if that matters. Okay, so now we also have another issue. Is at what point do we say it's unstable? Because this stabilizes. Let's bump the speed up. We're at the default speed, which is 1. I think if I bumped up with 2, it's going to be pretty bad. Okay, that defied... Wait, what? This seems no different. Okay, well, all right, now that I said it, every single time I say something, the game just proves me wrong immediately. But this seems comparable to strength 1, which I was not expecting, or speed 1 rather, because in my experience with my moving arm, the speed drastically changed the results. But if I go to like 0.5, is it more stable? It should be. All right, this seems also exactly the same. Why is this behaving differently than what I already thought was true? All right, let's go speed 0.1. My robotic arm definitely, the speed level dramatically changed the stability. And this, all right, 0.1, you can see way less wobble. All right, come on, get over there. It just takes a while to get there. Do we consider this amount of wiggle stability or no? I'm inclined to say no. I want absolute stability because let's imagine this is a tank turret. You get one shot every like 4 or 5 seconds. And if you're wiggling as soon as you point and aim, you're not going to be placing your shots where you're aiming. So we do not want this as an effect. So let's reduce it until we get stability, like immediate stability on a shot. So now I reduced it by 2 blocks. I think that what we're looking at here would be totally fine for a tank. Like you can see the slightest little wiggle for like a quarter of a second at the stopping point. And then you're just perfectly stable after that. So I would totally be happy with this for a tank. Let's take it 1 block further now, just because we moved back by 2 blocks and it's fine. So maybe we could have only done 1 block. This is pretty fine too. Now I'm curious, since we're right at we're 1 block away from it being not good enough. Let's up the speed and see if this brings us to not good enough. Whoa. Okay, now we're getting results that are both better and worse. Like that is worse. That was similar. That's similar. That was worse. All right, so it seems like 50 kilograms, 5 blocks away from the aiming servo, totally tolerable. Very, very tolerable. So, I mean, that's a very particular kind of measurement. How does this translate? Now, let me double this up. We're essentially doubling the weight, but keeping the same distance, the same average distance. I think this is probably going to be worse. What? I would figure that we've doubled the momentum that gets built up with this counterweight, but it seems to have essentially equalized. It's like it canceled out. That is really strange. These experiments are not... Oh, I'm still on speed 2 as well. Let's go back to speed 1. I was just gonna up it to speed 2 to see if that had an effect. Let's go back to speed 1 though. This almost feels... Is this better? All right, so here... Oh, you know what? This is gonna be such an easy way to test. I can put them next. I can duplicate this whole system. All right, so now we have 2 identical systems. Oh, this is great. And then we can compare different setups. So now if I do this, let's see how the wobble compares. See, these are identical. Even though the left one has more weight, it seems to not be an issue. But in the beginning of the video, when I added more weight as a counterweight, it seemed to make it worse, I thought? Or did it just not make it better? Oh, that time the single weight was slightly worse. I need to figure out this counterweight thing because I've gotten mixed results. So I'm going to push it to the point. 1 more block was not ideal. Wow. It is identical. So what this is kind of telling me is it's not necessarily a total weight thing. It's a total offset. No, it's not even like offset. I'm trying to think about how to convey this. The average weight distance from the rotation point, it's centered on the rotation point. This is where the weight is centered. Here, the weight is all the way over here. But these have identical results. However, if I add more weight to this, all right, here, here's the thing. We're keeping the center, the average center the same, but we're adding more weight to either side. So that should be worse now. way worse. Now, we haven't changed the average distance of the weight at all. It's still centered on the pivot point, but there's just more weight. But like the way I'm describing this, like, doesn't completely make sense to me, because all we've done was add more weight and we haven't changed the distance it is from the center point. However, that should mean that this weighs more than this. They should have different results, but maybe because, oh, all right, no, there's something here. It like just clicked. So now this has the same amount of weight. Oh, this is gonna be, I don't know what to expect with this, because this one has more weight than this total, but the average distance from the pivot point is closer to the pivot point than this. So I don't know what to expect to happen here. Okay, this seems identical now. All right, what I've done is now I put it back to where it was before, where the weight is symmetrical on the left side, but the same distance away from the center here. Now I'm gonna take one of these weights and add it one more block further, and now I think this one's gonna be worse. Clearly the left one is less stable. So what I've done here is increased the maximum distance of 50 kilograms. Now the maximum distance is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's on the 8th block. All right, there we go. So now these are 1 block difference. They're very similar. No, okay, no, it is not similar. All right, the left one is still worse. That's what should have happened. Okay, what do we do with this? I mean, there are things to do with this information. It's just harder to use it in a predictive sense, where we can actually know what to expect. There is a general sense of knowing what to expect. We can expect that the more weight we add farther away from the servo, the bigger the instability will become. Okay, so the only difference I'm gonna make between these now is I'm gonna add more weight to the left one, but it's gonna be centered on the pivot point. I'm gonna add 2 weights. Now, it's weird, but I'm kind of leaning towards this will make this one worse because I've increased the total weight in the system, even though I haven't increased the weight distance at all. Let's see what happens. Okay. I made a prediction that was correct finally. So I haven't increased the distance of the weight at all. Like this is exactly identical as this one, as far as the distance from the pivot point. I've just added on top of the pivot point, extra weight. So now these wobbles, this weight gets added into the wobbles. Now let's go ahead and add identical weight to this one, but this weight is on the ends. That should be a factor. That should mean that now this one is worse than this one, even though they have the same exact weight and the same exact max distance from the pivot point. This one has more weight away from the pivot point. Okay. Yeah, it is different. I haven't even turned them on. They're just in the off position, and you can clearly see the right one is worse. I'm gonna turn them on now. Yeah, right one is way, way, way worse. Trying to think about how I want to try to interpret this data as far as what to do with it, but I mean, I guess that's really less. If you're watching it and this is useful to you, you can interpret it however is gonna work for your builds. Someone's gonna use this like intentionally. That I'm curious. I feel like that's gonna happen. And then it's probably gonna end up getting adjusted and break the creation by fixing all the other creations that should be working normally. But I feel like someone's gonna find a use for the wobble in a way that is like genius. There's something I haven't tested here. All right, 2 identical ones. And now we change one of them to be 30 kilograms. Okay, we need to expand it to the more unstable point. Left one wiggles considerably more, noticeably more than the right one. Because I was worried like maybe like just having any weight block this far away, it's just the distance that matters more than the weight, but the weight clearly does make a difference, which I expected, but I had to test it because not everything goes as you would expect when you're testing video game physics. as opposed to real life physics. Predictions in real life physics are generally more reliable than video game physics. I mean, how else would we have gotten to the moon? Imagine if we had unpredictable physics and trying to get to the moon. Let's take a look at gun weights, because this is 50 kilograms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks away from the center of rotation, and it's not a happy time. Oh, thank goodness. The tank cannon only weighs 4.9 kilograms. So you're gonna have a lot more freedom. And you know what? Let's figure that out. That's probably gonna be one of the most relevant things. And how far away from an aiming servo can a tank barrel be before it starts being unfriendly to us? This is definitely good enough. All right, here we go. We are 18 blocks away now. Nothing but the barrel and the cannon at the end of the barrel. So that's 18 blocks away. Let's reduce it by 4. We're going down to 14 blocks. And this is definitely, I would say this is not ideal. Let's go with acceptable. If I'm gonna be firing, that is not reliably where I'm looking, because there's wobble right as I look over to a certain point. Oh, 10 blocks is smooth. It stops very quick. Let us try 12. I don't know. How you feeling about 12? It's noticeable. Way more noticeable for sure. But it does stop pretty quick. And at slower speeds, not bad. Yeah, compare that with the 14 blocks. Even as I'm just moving slowly, it is constantly wobbling. Yeah, so 14, not great. 12, definitely doable. This is kind of the maximum distance you're going to be able to have a tank cannon away from the point of rotation. And keep in mind, you're probably also going to be having these servos here. These servos are only 5 kilograms, so that's actually really nice. You're probably going to be wanting to aim your tank cannon up and down too. Now that adds more problems. All right, servos on top of servos matters. This is very bad because now we have up and down aiming. Okay, I wasn't quite expecting that. Let's reduce it by another 2 blocks. So now I think we're down to 10. This is 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 blocks away. Okay, so all of the measurements that we've just gone through only matter if you have a single servo. Now let's try something slightly different here. I'm going to have the servos. Oh, now I've added some verticality to it. Hold on. I just thought of a new type of measurement I didn't even consider before. Let's copy and paste this over here. Now we're going to keep the same distance away, but I'm just going to elevate it by a couple of blocks. And to keep the overall weight even, I'm just going to add this block on top over here. So now we just have the vertical distance difference between the endpoints. Does it matter? Not with this. Not noticeable with this current one. Let's just go up a bunch. Okay, so this doesn't make a difference. Like the weight here is probably closer like somewhere over here, whereas the weight here is probably closer to like somewhere over here. So that's a much farther distance compared to like this. But that doesn't make that much of a difference here. And the reason why I wanted to test that is because now if I elevate this up to make room for servos being on the sides, but up like this. Now let's see what happens. Okay. So this is interesting. What I know is that the amount of blocks and weight in this right one is identical to the left one. But now I'm going to reorganize everything. Ooh. Okay. Okay. So now, here's the next test. I'm gonna now duplicate this new one I just made. And then I'm going to move this block up. And I'm going to attach the up and down servos directly to this aiming servo. And in fact, I'm going to remove this block. So this one even becomes lighter. But I'm predicting that this one's going to be way less stable because we have moving part aiming servo directly attached to more moving part aiming servos. In my experience with things like hinges and rotating servos, the previous parts we had available to us, stacking them directly connected to each other often made them less stable, and having a buffer block in between, like this one has over here, this buffer block, tends to help the stability. So Let's see if these feel any different. Okay, I thought the left one was gonna be pretty unstable. I'm gonna be honest. Really thought the left one was gonna be pretty unstable. Is it worth? Oh wait, no, there's something going on here. Something bad is happening. I think that something bad is this block down here. Let's just get rid of some of this excess. Why is it so glitchy? I'm just gonna increase the distance. Yeah, okay, now, right, that's what did it. Now we can clearly see a difference between the two. Okay, yeah, they're different, right? Right, they're different. They're different. Yeah, they're different. They're different. Hold on. Let's make this cannon identical to the other cannon. There we go. Now they're identical. Wait, that made it worse. It fell off. So the buffer block idea, not really demonstrating whether or not it's true. Oh, no, okay. Kind of feeling like it's better over there on the right side now with more buffer. All right, well now it's not. Sometimes it isn't. It has let me repair. Let's do a little bit of reset. Turn them on. Okay, the one on the right is bad, but the one on the left is badder. Do with that information what you will, because I just do think in general having moving parts directly on moving parts is usually a recipe for instability. And if you have that issue, just if you can fit it, add some buffer blocks. Might ruin your design, but hopefully not. All right, I feel like I've done a lot of different tests. I'm sure that there's more testing to be done, but as far as just like the main purposes of the servos and the instability that they introduce right now, I think that gives a lot of information on how to tailor your builds to avoid that going forward. Definitely reduce the total amount of weight and the distance from the pivot point. It does seem that it's not even necessarily the total amount of weight. Like, I think this is one somewhat key takeaway that I hope is a reliable takeaway, but it doesn't necessarily seem that it's exactly the total amount of weight, because we have this amount of weight, 50 kilograms. I can double that weight and have not that big of an impact on it. But the main thing is that extra weight that you added symmetrical from the pivot point? Because as you can see, the middle and the left ones, actually the middle one seems worse than the left. The middle and, oh, that actually kind of makes sense a little bit. The middle and the left ones, actually everything's different here. The middle one has the least amount of weight, but it is offset from the middle, from the pivot point. The left one has more weight than the middle, but equally offset from the pivot point. And the right one has more weight than the middle, but it is asymmetrical from the pivot point, and that has the worst effect. It does seem that you can make something heavier if you just make it heavier on the other side. That's the main takeaway from this that I'm getting. But do you think there's anything else worth exploring with the aiming servos? Any information that you think would be good to have that might be video worthy? Let me know. Otherwise, for now, hope this helps. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy some more you can find right here on the end screen. Hope this video has earned your subscription. Anyway, this has been ScrapMan, and I'll see you next time. Bye.